A lot of the big issues I have is people saying this exercise is wrong. A lot of the things people are saying are wrong, most of the time are just comfortable for that person. I used to be one of those people that really focused on ideal form. And what I started to understand is ideal form isn't necessarily based on what makes that person comfortable, but based on basically physics form. Or what helps you give more optimal leverages in order to lift something, pick something up, throw something, so forth and so on. What I'm more concentrated on, for most people until they get to the point where their physiology and physics tend to be better, is their physiological form. Basically, what is their body comfortable doing at the time? In these video clips, one other thing I failed to kind of define a little bit better is what I mean by comfortable. And when I'm really talking about comfortable, what I mean is I want my clients to basically be in less pain and to move better. So what I'm really looking for, whenever I'm kind of looking for, does this help you move better, or is this more comfortable for you, is more so whether their speed is increasing, does it just feel better for them, and is there less pain on movement? I'm trying to make sure that the movements I do, because a lot of the times when we're doing more of these physics-based forms, they're hurting people, they're hurting clients, they're hurting friends, they're hurting members. People telling you should be doing this and it's not necessarily good for you. So you can think really more so comfortable is being good for you, is being something that doesn't put you into more pain, and a lot of the times it'll actually get you out of it. Sometimes things start to look a little funny. You have people doing what's called round back deadlifts, or when they're kind of hunched over whenever they deadlift. Now, I'm not saying that whenever you're deadlifting, it's necessarily okay to hunch your back, but what I am saying is for some people, when they're starting out on deadlifting, most of the time it's more comfortable for them to start out with a slouched back. And then as they progress, what will eventually happen is you start getting straighter and straighter over time. The reason why I'm also saying that round back deadlifts are okay is that basically your spine has a degree of movement to it, or joint motions it's capable of. From the entire spine, from basically your neck down to your sacral region, the main two movements involved in round back deadlifts are flexion and extension. A lot of people argue, well, first of all, flexion is more this way, extension is more backwards, but a lot of people argue that, if you look at the lumbar vertebrae, they're not meant to flex a certain amount, but they do have some degree of movement, and that's the point. All the movements of the body, all the joint motions, there are some degrees of movement, no matter whether it's supposed to be stable or whether it's bigger or smaller. Sure, that is an issue, but the idea here is that our body is supposed to move. We're supposed to be able to do certain things, and we're supposed to be able to function. So what I'm always looking for, and why sometimes in some of these videos things might seem a little weird, has more so to do with the way my body is set up, based on all the other movements I do outside of the gym as well. One of the other things I've noticed with a lot of people making some of their movement videos is the inclusion or exclusion of some of the variety that your body is capable of. And what I mean by that is that many people are limiting what they're doing based on what they see other people are doing. So some of the goals of this videos are really to try to help you understand that your body is capable of many variations of movement. And the reason why is that it comes down to what your joints are capable of. Now, through these videos we're going to cover the many facets of the joints, but in this video right now we're going to cover what your wrist can do. So again, your wrist is right here, and what we're focusing on are the four movements that it's capable of, the four main movements it's capable of, and then most of them are a combination of these four movements. So the first one is flexion, and that's basically when you move your wrist towards your elbow. So it's basically whenever you're thinking of really doing forearm curls or things like that. The next one is whenever you're doing what's called extension. Extension is primarily used in a lot of like hand balancing movements. So like handstands, elbow levers, things like that where you're actually supporting your body. So limited extension tends to kind of hamper things a little bit. The other two more unknown movements are called ulnar and radial deviation. These movements aren't done very much in a gym setting. They're done more through several levering feats with your wrist. Ulnar deviation is basically whenever you move towards the ulnar side or your pinky side of your wrist. So it's whenever you're moving your wrist this direction. Radial deviation is basically when you're moving to the opposite side. So your thumb is moving towards your elbow. So now one of your goals is to see if you can see those four movements, the wrist movements, in these videos. So in this first one you see a variation of the bent over row, basically going from the outside to the inside. And if you notice, my wrist is in slight, again, ulnar deviation. Here you kind of see more of an overhead pressing movement and some of the variations of that. But the idea is basically, again, using these wrist variations that kind of help me figure out a different way of looking at things. On this video, you kind of see me fumble a little bit. I hit the garage and kind of just, yep, anyway. So on this movement here, it's basically a thick bar overhead press. And the idea is kind of using two arms to come up because my body really doesn't like pushing up. But as I'm coming down, again, using more of the eccentric force in order to kind of help me build up my overhead press again. It doesn't really hurt me, which is also one of the things I'm looking for. Here I'm going to show you other kind of overhead press variations that I'm using to kind of rebuild my overhead pressing. Here you see me basically the landmine attachment on the prowler, as well as chains to load up more of the top of the movement, or the movement or the parts I seem to have a harder time on. I'm doing this quite a bit, again, using the chains because it seems to be helping me a lot faster and getting up there quite a bit more. Again, more variations, kind of showing you in different ways I'm setting up the chains, and different ways I'm setting up my body. Here you can kind of see my legs rotated more away from my body as my torso is rotated the other direction. The difference here is I'm using more of a handle, so just a basic cable handle that you see attached to a carabiner. And I'm doing different mixtures of a bicep curl and press. So kind of a pulling motion combined with a pushing motion. And then kind of figuring out which variations, whether leaning away from my body feels better, moving my feet slightly, or things like that, and seeing if this kind of makes it feel better and puts me into less pain, not more. Here I'm showing you from the backside kind of what that leaning away looks like. And if you can kind of see my arm, it is again kind of twirling around, so I'm adding more of a rotational movement as I'm coming up and down. I'm also now adding more of an inside-outside movement. That kind of makes it easier on my shoulder as I'm coming down, because as I was coming down before, it felt tight, so to speak. So I'm trying to kind of hopefully loosen that up as I go. Now, as you can see on this variation, I'm also adding more of my torso rotating through, kind of helping my shoulder rotate and really adding that rotation, so I work more of that kind of motion as well. Here I've decided to kind of load the chains up a little bit differently and load my body differently. The chains kind of fell off, so here I am kind of trying to set them up again. But the basic idea here is I've added the chains to kind of load portions of the movement, but I've added the kettlebell to add a very specific range of motion for the overhead press. If I remember right, this kettlebell is 70 pounds, and then the attached chain is approximately 20. So at the top of the movement, not including the smaller chain, I'm lifting about 90 pounds at lockout. So that's what I'm really going for. I'm still kind of getting used to the way the chain feels. I'm not used to pressing it yet, so you can kind of see me off balance sometimes or quivering a little bit. But the idea is the same. I'm just trying to load different parts of the movement. Here I'm doing a form of a croc row, and what I think it is anyway. And as you can see, one of the big differences in a croc row is leading more through that shoulder. Here is basically 100 pounds plus the chains, which would be a total of 160. And then now here I'm doing one arm deadlifts. It's approximately 195 pounds, 196 I believe. I'm not sure. I forgot if I added a 1 pound plate with one arm. I'm doing it again just to try to get it a little bit better, a little bit in terms of a higher full range of movement motion. And then I added a slight wrist rotation, which made it a little bit easier. I've kind of decided just to kind of show you, that even though a lot of people do gym movements, my whole goal is not necessarily just to be good in the gym. My goal is to be able to move in and out of life, so to speak. Some of these things that I like doing involve dancing, and I've never really showed anybody, me dancing before, but the basic idea is I do a form of dancing called popping, and popping is kind of a form of isolation of basically small movements and also combining them to form more of a flowy type feel. And my whole goal here is also to kind of go with the beat, so that's pretty much what I'm doing. So I'm kind of showing you, look, there's different motions your body is capable of, and here's some of them.